and I hope all the Swedish participants could follow the instructions for getting the translation in English. Um, Today we are, let me share the screen. Here we go. Um, I very much welcome you to today's meeting. My name is Anders Linden. I am chairman of the organization Agroforestry Sweden. This webinar is brought to you as part of a FarmForce project, which is funded by the Swedish Institute. And it's part of a series of 4 webinars giving presentations from Swedish experts and practitioners in state-of-the-art of agroforestry in conjunction with 4 different value chains. Today, we will have a focus on winter wheat and grain production in general, and um, we will look at the um, uh, here we go, the program for today. We will have start with Ingrid Öborn at 10 past 10. At 11 o'clock, we will move over to a Swedish farmer, and we will conclude with advisory service um, person Anders Hamer. Before we get started, I would also like to present the FarmForce project very briefly. Like I said, it's a project running over 2 years, funded by the Swedish Institute, and Agroforestry Sweden, the non-governmental organization here in Sweden, is leading the project together with Ivan Franko National University of Lviv, National University of Life and Environmental Sciences of Ukraine, and the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, as well as World Wildlife Fund Ukraine. I would like to present the different individuals working in this project. From the left, that is me, chairman of Agroforestry Sweden. We have Linus Linse and Karin Höök and Joachim, the treasurer of the organization, on the Swedish team. From the Ukrainian side, we have Hanna in WWF Ukraine, Marine and Olesia of Ivan Franko National University, and we have Vasil and Alexander of National University of Life and Environmental Sciences of Ukraine. So Linus, if you could share the program once more. Very good. So now we have the program in Ukrainian as well. Like I said, we will start with Ingrid Öborn. She is a professor of agricultural cropping systems at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences in Uppsala. She has worked as a senior research fellow with World Agroforestry Organization, where she contributes to advancing the global understanding of agroecological and multifunctional landscapes. We will then have our esteemed practitioner speak at 11. Anders Lundryd is a seasoned Swedish organic farmer, longtime advocate for ecological agriculture, and a pioneer voice in the role of multifunctional farming systems, such as agroforestry and sustainable food production. We will then have a short break for us to refill our coffees and conclude today's session with Anders Hamer, who's an agronomist specializing in soil and crop production with a long-standing experience as an agricultural advisor, particularly within organic farming systems. He spent many years working with the Rural Economy and Agricultural Society in Värmland, his local region, where he advised farmers on crop management, soil fertility, and the transition to organic production. So at the end of each session, there will be time for questions. During the session itself, it's possible to post questions in the chat. And at the end of the session, when questions will be answered, we as moderators will give priority to those speakers, those posing the questions who would like to post the questions themselves directly. And me and Hannah will also choose questions from the chat at the very end of this. So if you do have a pressing question, please raise your hand during the questions, and we will give priority to you. All right. So without further ado, we would like to hand over the word to Ingrid, and please take it away, Ingrid. Thank you very much. We would need your sound to be on, please.
So, do you see my slides in the correct way?
Not yet.
Not
We
yet.
would like presentation mode.
Yes.
Full screen, please.
Okay, and still not?
No, it's the other one. So,
Yes.
You should choose in display settings the another mode,
there
Yes,
because now we see your notes.
Oh, yeah, I see. I
It's
managed
on up.
before.
Display setting.
Next one, display settings.
Yes. So, good morning. I think this should be right.
yes.
Yeah. Good morning. So my name is Ingrid Öborn, and my background is also in agronomy and soil science, similar to Anders Heimer. And I'm professor of agricultural cropping systems at the SLU in Uppsala. And as I said in the presentation, I'm also linked to the World Agroforestry, the International Center for Research in Agroforestry. And I've been spending 6.5 years working for them. So I was based 3.5 years in Kenya in East Africa and 3 years in Indonesia working in Southeast Asia. And I say that because it explains some of the examples I will take, but I've also been working with agriculture related issues in Sweden. So you will see more from my presentation. So I'm very happy to be here, and I hope you will put questions when you have and when things are not clear or practical enough. So the outline is that since I think this is the first webinar in this series, I wanted to start to talk a little bit about land use in Sweden and also the role of wheat cultivation in Sweden. Continuing with tree cover on agricultural land and what is agroforestry, the roles of trees on farms and in agricultural landscapes, products and services they can provide, and like the concept, the right tree for the right place. Then examples of agroforestry practices, what is the purpose, what is it you want to achieve, what products, what benefits, how much work can you put in. So we can talk a bit about the design and establishment. And it's not only to plant the trees, but then how to manage the tree crop competition, the weeds, pruning, harvest, and so on. And then just come a little bit into the question of agroforestry and policy. I hope that will come back in later presentations as well, and in the discussion, lessons learned and ways forward, and give you some tips for more things to read. So starting with land use in Sweden, as you can see here, forestry or forest is really the major land use in Sweden. And the agricultural land only adds up 8% of the land area. So it looks very, very different here compared to Ukraine. So I think that's an interesting basis for the discussion. So I had the opportunity to visit Ukraine for a mission a number of years back. So I have seen your huge fields and rich soils. And then in addition to the forestry and agriculture, it is sort of wetlands of different types, of course, bare rock, built land, and so on. Looking at it in another way, you see again the big forest land with the productive and unproductive forest, but I wanted to put your attention to the here, the agricultural land that we divide into agricultural land and pastures. And together it is 3 million hectares of land, so 2.5 million hectares arable land, that is like under rotation mainly, and 500,000 hectares that is pasture. And looking at how it is distributed over the country, so it is this light yellow that is open land or in the agricultural land. And you can see up in the north, it's along coast and river valleys. It's more around lakes here in central Sweden. It is around this big lake, Karlstad. Up here is where you have Anders Heimer. And down here somewhere you have Anders Lunneryd. And we have it around here. So you can see that it's not everywhere. Up here it is white, so that is rocks. So it's only the yellow. So you can see it's not evenly distributed. And here you see, yeah, again, roughly how many million hectares of each type. I thought it was nice to, next to this map, put a map of the population in Sweden, that the total is about 10.6 million. And you can see that it is very much looking, it's mirroring the areas of agricultural land very much. And they're also a large part of the countries where forestry is dominated, which is less populated. Going into the different crops grown on the arable land. So this is the like what adds up to 2.5 million hectares. So this is the arable land, not the pasture or grasslands, permanent grasslands. Starting with the cereals that we totally have around 1 million hectares. You can see that wheat constitute about half of that, followed by barley, oats, and others. And others could be rye and triticale, or also some mixtures. And the wheat, winter wheat is really dominating, but there are also some percentages of spring wheat that for different reasons are sown in spring because of the climate, the soils, and also because that can give a higher protein concentration, a higher quality of the wheat. So roughly 500,000 hectare wheat. And that has been increasing over the years on the expense of barley, for example. So Swedish farmers, they try to plant as much winter wheat as they can in many parts of the country, with those being into arable cropping. So as much as the weather in the autumn allows, is usually planted by winter wheat in areas which is suitable for that. So it has been increasing. Years back, barley was the actually most frequent, and that it was spring barley. But as I say, the country is also, of course, very diverse, so we can divide it into 5 productivity zones, starting with 1, the most productive, which is the yellow, and the darker yellow is the number 2, the 3, 4, 5. And if we are looking at where we then have the cereals, in the number 1, we have 62% cereals, and actually of the total 100, it is 36% wheat. But also in the zone 2, it's very much more than 1/3 of the land is covered by wheat. And then when we come to zone 3, it's 20% wheat, and going down to 8, and even only 2% in the zone 5, which is either on the highlands here or further north. So you can see that it's quite restricted where certain crops can be grown. Just to give you a little bit of a picture to start with. The main part of my talk, I will not go so deep into the wheat production per se today. how you do it and so on, because I think you're all very aware of how wheat is being produced. Maybe I should say that the yields of wheat can be like 4 to 6 tons, but it can be 6 to 8, going up to 10. So it's quite intensive production with quite good yields, depending on where you are and how you manage. And I'm sure we can discuss that more with Anders Heimer and Anders Lunnerud later on. Then looking at the integration of trees or shrubs on farms. This is a picture from one of my students who did the thesis recently. And a very common way is to put trees as windbreaks to protect from wind or from wind erosion in areas with more light texture soils or soils that are prone to wind erosion. And we have that in parts of the southern Sweden, like on big fields with windbreaks. And I understand that's also a common practice in Ukraine. It can also be in certain farms where they would like to produce timber trees. They can make it a boundary planting, so not really for windbreaks, but still around the boundaries. It can also be like here, riparian buffer strips to plant trees along the water courses to utilize that there is water, but also to take up excess nutrients that might be leached from the agricultural land and the arable fields. This picture up here illustrates the alley cropping. Here it is quite small fields, but the trees are between and the crops are here. And in many cases it's cereals. I'm not quite sure what she planned for here. It more looks like some maybe horticultural cultivation. And of course the distances can be very different between the alleys, and that might be something we will discuss later on. The most common practice of agroforestry and the traditional practice in Sweden would be the silvopastoral systems, which can be also on the permanent grass areas, or very much is on the permanent grass areas, where trees are scattered in the grazing areas. And down here we have forest gardens, which is more a multi-strata system with trees, shrubs, bushes, and plants, and usually smaller areas, a type of multi-purpose home garden, we can say. So what is then agroforestry? It looks like it can be many things. Yes, I think it can. It's a land management system with trees on farms and in agricultural landscapes. That's a very broad definition. It can be just combining trees or shrubs and crops, trees and livestock, trees, crop and livestock, or farming in forests. So some definitions more formally. So one from the European Commission, that agroforestry is a land use system in which trees are grown in combination with agriculture on the same land. From one of the bigger EU projects that has been running, say that agroforestry is the practice of deliberately integrating woody vegetation with crop and animal systems to benefit from the resulting ecological and economic interactions. And the last one I wanted to put up, which are some of the more founders or pioneers in the word agroforestry, is about interactive benefits from combining trees and shrubs with crops and or livestock that offers landowners and managers the opportunities to create an integrated land use system. I think the key with all of them is that both the trees and the crops has a purpose. It's not that it happened to be trees like next to the fields or on the edges of the fields or on the grazing areas. The trees are there for a purpose. The trees are also managed. They can be harvested or utilized in different ways. So it's like, for me, an active management of the land use system, integrating trees or shrubs with crops and or livestock. So how does it look like? How much tree cover do we have on agricultural land globally? And this is studies that have been repeated twice, and they build it like on remote sensing, so the interpretations from those maps. And it's trees outside forest. So forest areas are not included. So it's trees outside forest that potentially can be agroforestry, or in some definitions it is agroforestry. And here you can see a huge difference between Sweden and Ukraine. Sweden, you see very, very little coloring up here because so much is forest and it's not included. And the small 8% of agricultural land, you see a little bit of colors where we have some trees. You see Ukraine, where it to me seems that you don't have too much forest. So most of the trees are in agricultural landscapes. And looking at the scale here, the yellow is 0 to 5% tree cover, but the light green is 6 to 10, and a little bit darker 11 to 15. And maybe you are somewhere around here, here in 2010 when this survey was done. And the reason why they did it was that when it started to be talk about getting paid for carbon sequestration, sort of in the climate change mitigation, it all focused on forests and how much carbon can be bound in the forests. And then people working with agriculture and agroforestry wanted to show that actually is a lot of trees also outside the forests and a great potential for carbon sequestration in these areas. And that's why it was quantified both the areas like this and also how much carbon. So looking at the summary of this is that 43% of agricultural land globally have at least 10% tree cover and 23% at least 20% tree cover. And the tree cover had increased with 2% since year 2000, except in a few countries where there were other civil unrest or major land use changes. And the question is, like, does it matter? So looking at this very maybe simplified sketch with these carbon stocks here on the y-axis, but it could also be biodiversity or water infiltration capacity or other benefits from having trees. And looking at the old forests, different type of degraded forests, annual crops, grasslands, and back into mosaic landscapes, you can see that the agroforestry is usually there in the forest boundaries or in the mosaic landscapes where people have tried to restore or maybe always preserved a mixed landscape with woodlots, with the windbreaks, with riparian buffer strips, or other types of arrangements for the agroforestry practices. And you can see that on both of those sides, it's like richer, both in carbon, but also in biodiversity and many other functions. So looking a little bit more into the different benefits. So what can we get from the trees and shrubs, or from integrating the trees and shrubs on our farmland? Yeah, it can provide food, fodder, wood, building material, fuel, medicine if you have medicinal plants. So on the picture here, you have the building materials. This is for keeping goats. You have a beehive here that both need shade and of course flowering shrubs. Here we have charcoal that also can give benefit to in rural areas. But first you need to grow the trees. Supporting functions with nitrogen cycling, soil formation, primary production of biomass. Quite a few of the shrubs we usually use and some of the trees are nitrogen fixing, but they also take up nutrients from deeper soil layers than some of the crops and recycle it through the litter and the leaves. Regulating services with the carbon sequestration that I talked about. It can be biological pest control, there can be natural enemies there, but it can actually also be pests. So it is both sides. It's also a way to increase the water infiltration. And it's many aspects, of course. It's aesthetical, it looks nice, educational, recreational, and being in many countries where we have a lot of sun in the summer, people usually gather under a tree, and around houses we plant trees. So trees has a role is not only like aesthetic, but it's actually also to provide a meeting place for people, somewhere to sit and talk in the shade. But it's not only about planting any tree anywhere. So a very important thing, I think, is this: the right tree for the right place and the right purpose. And we need to start with the land managers, the farmers, the local people, the ones having the land or managing the land. So what are the products you would like to have? Is it fruit? Is it firewood? Maybe nuts, medicinal aspects? Is it income? Of course, also then from the fruits and nuts, could be from the timber a little bit more long term. Is it the building material, really the timber? Is it fodder? And there it is the nitrogen fixing shrubs. Or is it for services, more to support the rest of the cultivation on the farm, to improve soil fertility, sequester carbon, prevent erosion, protect watersheds, create shade, as I talked about, or biodiversity. And I would say often it is many of those. But really getting the right tree, both for the one thing you want to produce, but also for the climate and the soil, to think about what would work where. And then the right tree for the right place and the right purpose is the really important starting point. And the trees and crops, planted together in the same field, it can be usually at the same time or sometimes one after the other. It depends on, and when it is one after the other, it is people practicing rotational fallow. So instead of only having fallow, they plant very quickly growing nitrogen fixing shrubs that can grow for a year or a couple of years before they are cut. And it's sort of a type of green manure practice. But it can also be that someone is putting aside a part of the field as a woodlot because there's a need for firewood, or there is a good price for electric pools, for example, or something else, and planting a part of the field for a number of years with like a tree or shrub. Can be the boundary planting, as we talked about, and the windbreaks that are here, and they don't need to be so close together to protect from the wind, but it's good to have them a bit dense. It's the alley cropping, and here is very different. Here it's very tight with trees. My experience is from when I've been visiting those bigger farms or arrangements with the alley cropping is that asking the experience, they said, yeah, we planted with the width that fitted the machinery we had when we planted. But many times machinery has grown bigger. And now they said, if I would plant it again, I would have even wider between my alleys. And of course, you can arrange it in a way so you could remove every second alley when the trees or shrubs have been growing higher or your machinery has developed. Another comment I often got was that from the beginning, I planted the crops very, very close to the alley. But now I've started to have a little bit more of a buffer between because of the competition. And then the thing is more how to deal with the weeds, or do the grass need to be cut in between? You also have trees in croplands that can be like scattered at bigger or smaller scale. This is common in some areas where you have, it can be olive trees or more high value fruit trees and other things where people have them scattered and graze or grow underneath. But it's not so practical, of course. If you have more mechanized agriculture, then maybe you rather want to have them in the rows. But here are different ways of arranging. And a quick look, we shouldn't go through all this. What is it really? Why do we want to bring in these trees on the arable land? of course, as we said, they have a very good photosynthesis, sequester carbon, producing biomass, and it can be various products coming out of that depending on the tree species. They also create shade and microclimate, so it adds humidity here. So the breakdown of organic matter is slower. It might be that certain crops or tree crops need a bit colder climate and want to be prefer to be grown here. Leaves and branches are bringing back organic matter. It can be nitrogen fixing, of course not all species, but some are. The roots are decomposing. Roots are strong, so they can go through. This is like a hard pan in the soil, where the roots have been going through, so they can take up nutrients and water from a deeper soil layer. And also with the changing climate. So I visited, for example, there are very old agroforestry trials in southern France, in Montpellier. And for example, there they said that if they would do it now, they would have a broader space between the alleys. But they also said things have changed. So for them to grow certain fruits, they needed to have shade trees and irrigation. So then it became more a multistrata with the fruit trees as the lower trees and then some higher shade trees on top of that. In a similar way as often cacao or tea or coffee are grown in the tropics. So really to decide what tree to choose and how to do it, thinking about the tree characteristics that we just looked at. Are they fixing that? And also then how we should plant it, what we want to have it for. So if it is for being quick biomass, fodder, maybe also for certain quick firewood, nitrogen fixing ability might be useful also for the soil fertility. We might want fast growing for certain things, but not for other. Coppicing is an important property. I don't know if you know coppicing and non-coppicing trees. So the coppicing ones are if you have the trees or the shrubs and you cut them down, they come back again. So like salix, for example, that we grew as short rotation forestry here, or we've done more than we do today. It's a coppicing tree. So it's shooting again from the same roots, which means that once it is established, you cut it for some use and it's coming back. The positive thing there is that it would still like bind soil from erosion because the deep root system is there, and it's coming back just in a couple of years. Of course, if you have used it more for improved fallows, or you plant quick growing trees for a while, but then you want to go back to another type of cultivation, then you want a non-coppicing tree species. You want to be able to cut it and it's not coming back again. So this with coppicing, non-coppicing is important. If they're deep rooted or not, it's something to think about depending on how you want to have it. If it's a shade tree, it should have a light canopy, because a dense canopy would compete too much with the crops for light. Suitable for fodder, if that is something of interest, because of course they are more resistant to drought than fodder grasses. How compatible they are with the crops, and that has to do with how much they compete for water, light, and nutrients. Quick recovery, lots of biomass. So there are different aspects to think about, and then think, okay, so, and how would I like to plant, to do the arrangements on my farm? And there's just some pictures to show different way of management that is also very traditional, with a strong pruning here for firewood, but it can also be used for fodder. So as I said, if you just plant trees or shrubs and don't manage them, they could grow a little bit wild and might not have so much of a function depending on. Usually require management, so that needs to be taken into account. And that's also why they need to give a product and a service that you really are willing to invest working time and money in. There are some examples how it can look like, starting up here. So this is alley cropping of hedgerows with berries. On this side is the sea buckthorn, very C vitamin rich. The thing is then to develop, so how to harvest, how to process, but there is a good market for products from these. So that is like a type of activity that is growing. And in this farm, they don't have so wide distances between because they don't have so big machineries. The other pictures here are from Scotland, where they have cleared, they don't have so much forest, they have a need for trees, and it's also very windy. And down here, it is a boundary planting. But you can see, if you look closely, all the livestock are actually down there for shade. And when I've been there in the winter, it's very windy. They also are down there for wind protection. But up here, it's supposed to produce high-value trees they've been choosing, but at the same time, it gives some shade for the grazing without removing the function of the grazing land. Here is more intercropping with crops and vegetables. So it's apples combined with in this picture is mainly horticultural crops, because when you go into those more work intensive, it usually people are sort of doing horticulture fruits together. But you will also hear later on about, of course, how apples can be combined with cereals. Even in highly mechanized agriculture, and those pictures are from Brazil, but they could also be from Central Southern Europe, where it is trees and cereals. In this case, it is maize, but of course it could be wheat. And you see that this is arranged for mechanized agriculture. Here they are pruning the stems, and it gets far less shade to the crop here compared to here, where they have let the trees grow maybe a little bit too much. Difficult to say how big the edge is here, that is sort of too shaded for the maize. Otherwise, our experience, we've done quite a lot of work with maize, competition between maize and trees, because I mainly worked in climates where maize is more important crop than wheat. And we thought from the beginning it should be about water and light, but we learned that in most cases, the nutrient competition is the most serious of them. Of course, it depends on, of course, you can get also problem with drought and too little light, but nutrients, since the trees are quite efficient. So what they do and what they have done in the trials in France is that they have been pruning roots. So they have like an equipment cutting down here down to 0.5 meter. So the roots like are forced to go down below 0.5 meter. And when they have been digging and look how it looks like, it's really sort of the trees have developed a different root system compared to unpruned. So that is one way, if you're short of land or really would like to manage well, that is one way to go about it. This is an example of this dispersed interplanting that we looked like in the sketch before. So here's also maize fields scattered with trees, and these are mango trees. And you see they have very dense canopies. And when we were out in the field, one of the researchers or extension people very much into cereals were asking the farmer, can't you see how much cereals you lose because of your trees? And the farmer responded, yes, but the products I get from these mango trees, the fruits, the value of the fruits are exceeding what I lose from out of my cereal production. And in this way, I diversify my risks. So I spread the risks and I diversify my income. Even if this become more work intensive, but here they are a bit, they don't have so big land areas per family. This is an example for shade, and here you can see They don't put them too densely together, and it's also tree species with quite a light canopy. So this is a tea plantation, but it's even more common for coffee and cacao. And this can be used like soleless timber trees or for wood. But it might also need to prune them down here so the crowns and the branches become higher up. This farmer is very much into dairy cows and goats and need a protein-rich fodder. And of course, it's possible to grow it on the land, but it takes quite a lot of land, and there are many competing interests for crops to grow, both for sale and for the family. So they have chosen to grow, it's called Calliandra. So it's a nitrogen-fixing shrub, which is one of those coppicing that I said before, where you can cut and it's growing again, and they can cut maybe every second month branches to feed their animals. And the protein concentration is so good, so they actually immediately see an effect on the milk production. So it's worthwhile doing it. They can keep more cattle or goats on the farm with this system. But as you also see, you need to think long term, and it's more difficult to buy tree and shrub seeds or seedlings than to buy wheat grain or maize grain for seed. So they also let some of them grow high so they can collect their own seed. And it's also good value if you get good at that and good at producing seedlings for an extra income.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ingrid. We can close up in a few more minutes.
Yeah.
And then we need some time for questions as well, please. Thank you.
Yeah. So looking into Europe, there are different systems, but the most common would be wood pastures to silvopastoral systems, as I talked about earlier, but also big oak trees in the Mediterranean, intercropping of fruit trees and arable crops, or also large areas of olive agroforestry with grazing and crops. And actually here they have done a mapping to see the distribution in Europe. And this was done about 10 years ago, but I haven't found more recent numbers. And you see the arable agroforestry in arable land, there are dots, so it exists, but not the huge areas. The huge areas are really like with livestock agroforestry. But then also here down in the southern and central part, the high value tree agroforestry. And here you see the combined picture, and then also Sweden is coming out because of the silvopastoral areas. And this is a way to try, where they examined in this project the different types of agroforestry and what is sort of driving the different developments. So in arable systems, it's specific type of agroforestry for arable systems, livestock systems, and for the high value tree systems, or if it is more for conservation with the high value nature and cultural values and the mixed farming. So you can think about where do you want your farm to be, and where do you how do you position yourself in this triangle? And I talked before about the carbon sequestration, and it's also been scientists have been putting data together for the carbon sequestration, just because the climate agreement in Paris 2015 also to include agroforestry practices as one of the land uses for the carbon accounting came up, as well as those maps I showed before on trees outside forest. So that's why they needed to understand the benefits of agroforestry practices. I will not look into the detail, but here is the carbon above ground, like in the branches and stems, and it is below ground. And here are the agricultural agroforestry practices and what the different studies have shown. And all of them have shown that it is more carbon compared to a crop only, both above and below ground, but it varies a lot, and some of them are more efficient in sequestering carbon. So I just wanted to point at some numbers on one of those products. So how to get an increased interest and how to learn more, because it's a knowledge-intensive type of activity. Yeah, research and farmer demonstration trials are usually useful to demonstrate and evaluate agroforestry practices. So I talked about the experiments in France. We also experiments in southern Sweden in Lönstorp for SLU Alnarp's farm with a number of different combinations. Here are an area which has had a lot of problem, or have a lot of problem with soil erosion, used to do like just crop cultivation on the slopes, but started to establish agroforestry. And here it learned that the combination of planting grass strips together with planting the trees was the way forward, because just the small seedlings didn't help to stop the erosion. And with the grass strips in combination, terraces have been formed in this area. And after a number of years, it looked like this. And now they have actually done it on a 50 hectares demonstration landscapes where many farmers have participated, because they realize that they can produce more. They're not so interested in the timber trees, they take too long time, but the fruit trees and coffee shrubs together with the crops and the grass. So it also requires connection with some livestock keepers who would like to buy the fodder or that they have it themselves. So this is just some examples of the integration of fruit trees with the grass and crops. So I wouldn't go through all the details here. And this picture shows the cost for investments in agroforestry year 1 to 7. So it's much more cost the first year. And here are the incomes from the different years. And the key point here, this is compared with the maize only. So after 3 years, it is like the break even, where the investment in the agroforestry then starts to pay off more when the agroforestry system start to produce also fruits. So this means that some sort of support in the investments. So here is to see the farmer perspectives on the expansion of, here is fruit tree agroforestry, what is required. And one thing is the finances or the incentives or the possibilities for loans, the techniques, the market, and so on. And another thing that I would like to highlight is that to invest in agroforestry, the land ownership or land rights are important, because you want to be sure you can keep the land long term to do it. But it's always very important to see what are the local people's perspectives. And here discussion groups with both men and women. So this is one of the women groups. So the question
Sorry,
now,
Ingrid.
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We have 4 more minutes left
Yeah.
on
No,
your
I
time
know.
slot.
I'm coming to the end. So the question is, how will agroforestry be adopted and developed, maybe towards 2030, 2040? How will the map look like? And my experience and the lessons learned from all the years I've been working with agroforestry in different parts of the world is that, as I said, it's a knowledge intensive. We need interaction between research, policy, and practice. We will learn from each other, we develop together, but we also need the policy support, since it is more long-term than many of the arable cropping systems. But it's also a way to reach some of the global goals we have, for example, through the Sustainable Development Goals. And I put some reading tips, but I can give you many more if you, and you can download that book if you contact me. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ingrid, for that international perspective on agroforestry. We have a couple of questions that has come in through the chat, but I would first like to give the participants a chance to ask their questions directly. So if you raise your hand now, you're welcome to come in and asking it a question, or perhaps Sergey would like to pose his question directly to Ingrid. Otherwise, I will read it for him.
Yeah, so thank you for opportunity to ask questions directly. Ingrid, thank you very much for your comprehensive presentation. It It's very interesting to hear what's happening in the field of agroforestry worldwide. My question related to legal restrictions of use of some invasive or not native tree species in Ukraine. What do you think? We have now we live in a condition of climate changes. We can't use traditional or local tree. We can do that, but it's not effective in sense of biology of this species. Your opinion, should we change legislation or we try to find uh, appropriate species that can be used?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult question. Of course, you think like you learn in the school book, you should say you should only use the indigenous species. But I mean, the truth is with many of the species I've been showing, they have been coming from one country to another. You know, so the thing is, I think the thing is to try it well, and so they don't start to spread and become invasive. Because of course it doesn't need to be invasive just because you bring something from Brazil to Ukraine or where now you want to find it. I think it can work if it's tried in small scale, but just check how are they spread so they don't become invasive. There are cases where they have been bringing in bushes and then they have stopped managing the system and they spread. But as long as you manage, so I think that there is a balance. So I think maybe legislation needs to change a little bit because if you think about the crops we are using in agriculture, they are not all domesticated from our native crops in our specific country, isn't it? We are sharing them between countries. So the thing might be to see, so where is the climate traditionally as your climate is predicted to be now? You know, what species are there? What can we use? So for me, I think we should go that way. We also need to learn from other areas which have had the climate that we are getting. But be careful, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your opinion.
Thank you very much for that very relevant question. It's a big discussion in Sweden as well. I interpret Ingrid's response as a lot of research is needed on the effects, and that should be incorporated into the legislation. Vasil, you will have the last word, and then we will have a short break before we speak with Anders Lunneryd. Vasil, please.
Okay, many thanks, Ingrid, for your presentation. It's a very nice presentation, not only for the professionals, but for students, what are the students. It would be very nice to learn this presentation. So my question is the next, the following. You told us about the typology of agroforestry and it's more popular systems of agroforestry in the world. But you don't mention about syntropic agroforestry and rural agroforestry. Maybe this syntropic agroforestry is close to the rural agroforestry. What's your opinion?
So now I don't really understand your question.
What is the differences between syntropic agroforestry and rural agroforestry? Is it the same?
Yeah, rural agroforestry. What do you mean then? Maybe someone can help us.
So according to the area of typology, agroforestry typology, there is rural agroforestry mentioned also. It seems to me that it's not difference between syntropic agroforestry and rural agroforestry. More the rural agroforestry is more wider.
Yeah.
I think
I've not heard those concepts before, but it for me, I think that possibly is the same. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I might be able to give a short interpretation of this. That syntropic agroforestry and rural agroforestry, it's similar in practice, but it comes from different angles of knowledge traditions. and it's similar in its outcome, but different in where it comes from in your traditions. That it's a very interesting discussion, Vasil, and we can
Yes.
save some of this for the panel questions at the very end, and perhaps Anders Heimer and Anders Lunderyd, our practitioner, will have a more satisfactory answer to your question, Vasil. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're down to 2 minutes of break. I will extend that to 3 minutes past. So please hurry up and get your coffee, and I'll see you back here in 4 minutes. Thank you very much. And perhaps we can ask the services to bring up Anders Lunderyd's presentation. Linus, are you on this?
Yes, I can see what I can do. It's a question for the tech support.
Yeah, tech support, please. You can bring up Anders
презентацію ще
Lunderyd.
раз. А яку презентацію, будь ласка, скажіть?
What is the name of the presentation, please?
It's numbered 2, and it says Anders Lunderyd.
Guard. Yeah.
Let me see.
Excellent. Right. And instructions to tech support. When Anders Lunderyd speaks, he will ask you for next slide, please, so that you stand ready to switch slides for him. Thank you.
Okay.
And we will start in 2 minutes. Anders Lunderyd, are you also ready? Anders, you're with us?
Yes, I am.
Nice.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
Yeah.
Like I said, I gave everyone another 2 minutes, but I will ask you to start when time is up.
Yeah. You tell me when to start.
Very good. Okay, Anders, it's now 3 minutes past, and please proceed. Everyone, this is Anders Lunderyd of Lundens Farm, translated to English. And He's our farmer and practitioner for today. Please, Anders, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Anders. Yes, my name is Anders Lunneryd, and I feel very, very honored to have the possibility to speak to you today. And I hope you will understand my English. Of course, you are interpreted. This farm that I've been growing on, I am the third generation on the farm, and I have 7 employees. We are 7 person working on the farm. So I'll just give you first a small introduction on my farm. It's my family. We are 5 person. I have 3 children and my wife. We all work at the farm. We are 4 person working full time and 3 person working part time. My wife is also a nurse, and she on the farm she takes care of making the bills to our customers, and also working on the farm with different things. My 2 sons work full time, and also I do that. And I also have a employee that is working full time with the machinery and do mostly field work and so on. My daughter and another employee works part time. The farm is on 270 hectares, and 100 hectares of them are owned by me, 170 hectares are leased, and it's mainly heavy clay. We grow lots of different grains on the farm. We have wheat, of course, spring wheat and autumn or winter wheat. And those kind of wheat that we grow is more or less conventionally wheat types or old varieties, land races. So genetically very diversified and heterogeneous wheat types. We grow spelt wheat, or dinkel as someone prefers to say, emmer wheat, and einkorn wheat. Those are all types of wheat. We grow different kind of rye, an old Finnish type that was originally used for burning down forest actually, and growing after in the ashes of the forest. I think it's called Sweden rye in English. This is a very low yielding type of rye, but it gives a very special kind of flour and a good taste to the products and the bread that we make from that. And also we grow an old types of rye that is originally from Germany and was developed in the middle of 1900. We grow.
But we still.
Pardon?
Sorry to interrupt. We're still on slide 1. It's supposed to be that way, or it's...
Yeah, it's true. I do not shift slides. I just talk to this slide, and we will talk about the other slides later. So we can stay on this slide, and I will talk to the slides later. I don't have so much slides, so this you will have to listen to my talking instead. We also grow oats, of course, two types of oats, older types, and one naked type of oats that is for human consumption directly. We also grow barley for human consumption. We grow also for seed production, timothy and clover, both white clover and red clover. We grow rapeseed, peas, and field beans. So all these crops we don't grow every year. Of course, it's very many crops, and I don't have so much fields. But this is a small-scale farm. Our 270 hectares in my area, where we live, is not a very big farm. The farms around here are the units are often bigger from the farmers around my farm here. And I will just go on. Yeah, I mentioned mentioned that we have mostly heavy clay, yes, and my turnover, or I will go into my customers and how we sell our products. We like to be stay close to the customer, to approach the customer, and to sell as much as possible directly to customers or shops or bakeries. And this is the way for us to be competitive and to have a good economy on the farm. This is very, very difficult, very, very important that this works. And our customers, of course, as I said, it's individual consumers. We have a shop on the farm where we can sell our products. I will show you a picture on that one. It's a very small shop, but we have about 5,000 to 6,000 person shopping in the shop each year. So that gives us some money, and also I'll talk about that later on. We do something that is called rekoring. That is a way of producers and consumers to meet on Facebook. You create a Facebook group. Maybe you've heard about this. This is a thing that came from Finland like 6 or 7 years ago, so I think. These groups in Facebook, they decide a place where they want to meet, mostly every fortnight, so 2 weeks in between the meetings. And you put out your products on Facebook, and the customers respond what they want to buy. And when we come to the point, it's mostly a parking lot, we bring exactly the products that they have ordered. So it's not like a market. It's different in that aspect that we don't bring anything extra, and we don't sell on the marketplace. We just meet there with the customers and hand over their products, and they pay by a special internet pay. I think that could work in your country too. And this, we have 14 different groups that we are participating in, so it's quite a lot of work. But the turnover is about 800,000 crowns per year. So it gives quite a lot of money, and it's a good way to get a good economy in our farm. Other customers that we have is bakeries, shops, millers that want to buy our special grain. We have big corporations also that buy things from us. The small seeds of timothy and clover is grown by contract to big company. We also sell directly to other farmers, mostly our field beans and some grain that is not suitable for human consumption. My way of thinking about this is, where do you find yourself on the scale from producing something for the world market and moving towards, if we start there on the world market with our stuff, I don't produce anything for the world market. I think maybe the small seeds, clover and timothy, which are sold by the big company in the next step. But where do I want to find my products? I move towards the customers all the time, the people who are eating my products. The closer I get to the individual consumer with my product, the more money I will gain from this from the grain or whatever this product is. I can go into what we produce. Of course, we have from the trees, which is a 14-hectare field. So we'll come to that too, with 1,400 trees. Apple trees. I grow mainly apples. This climate we have here is suitable for apples. And I'll talk more about this when I show the slides that will come later on. We make flour for baking. Wholemeal flour, different kind of flour, different milled in different ways. We make granola for breakfast eating, or what you call it, porridge, pasta, spaghetti, and hard bread. We don't make everything ourselves. We have entrepreneurs that helps us, like the pasta and the hard bread is made from other entrepreneurs, and also some of the flour. We also have our own mills for the whole meal. Let's see if I have anything more here. I think we can go on to, well, there is one thing. Our total turnover could be interesting. It's about 10 million crowns on the farm, which is pretty good for, I think, for a arable farm. We have not any. We do not have cattle or pigs or any production animals. Yeah, we can move on to the first slide then. So can you shift slide? Yes. I was inspired by a guy called Stephen Briggs in 2017, I think it was. He showed a lot of pictures. This is one of his pictures. He had a system with 3 rows, alleys, and 27 meters between the alleys. And this picture just shows one. I don't know if it's one of his drawings, but he very much stressed that you should you should prune the roots when the trees are growing to make the root of the tree go straight down to the soil and not interrupt with the crop. I haven't done that yet on my farm, but it will be coming soon. We can take the next slide, please. This is year 2020 when we started to plant the trees. First, we put up a fence because we got deer and pigs and moose that can go into the growings of the trees, and we would not want them to destroy the trees. Especially the small deers are very tough on the trees. So this is a picture on this is also this is year 2020. Okay, we can take the next slide, please. To be able to create, you could say, a good place for the trees, the tractor up to the upper part of the picture to the left. I took that one and made the soil a little bit higher where the trees were to be planted. So that shows that on that picture. To be able to plant all the trees, my family and neighbors and relatives helped us to plant those 1,400 trees, and it was done in one day. And so we made a sort of a nice gathering out of it. And you can see my older son with a cat down to the left there, and to the right is giving some food and hamburgers, I think it was, to all the people that was helping us to plant the trees. Next picture, please. Here you can see the work on the field, and we had extra soil that we put down in the hole, so to say, where we planted the trees, and some fertilizer, organic fertilizer, down beneath the tree roots. And you can see my both sons there and my farm, our farm, in the background. And you can also see our solar panel on the barn there. Okay, we can take the next picture, please. Those are the varieties that we are growing. Maybe a little bit crazy to have so many different varieties, but this is a test to see which old Swedish kind of trees, varieties that could have a good life in an agroforestry system, as we don't have much experience from growing apple trees. But mostly there are 4 main varieties. There says 8 main varieties here, but actually it's more 4. It's Karin Schneider, Discovery, Santana, and Egremont Russet. Those trees are about 230 or something like each. The Egremont russet is not very successful, unfortunately, because it's a very, very tasty and nice apple. But we'll see in a few years whether they can manage to grow on the farm here. Otherwise, it's old kind of Swedish varieties of apples. We don't know. We don't need to go into that. I can say that the stems, the growth of the trees are middle strong. They're called 111, also 111, so the kind of strength in their growth. That's what it describes. We can take the next picture, please. After the plantation, we put a lot of water on each plant. We have a tank that we bring water onto the field and put a lot of water to each tree. And we do this still. We don't have an automatic irrigation for our trees, so we have to put water out in this manner. And in the background on the left, you can see some trees standing for the wind. That's an old alley from before. But the wind is a problem here. We should have more wind shelter, but that will be coming later. Okay, we can take the next picture, please. We just see some of the crops growing in between, and there's one of my sons doing organic spraying against aphids, I think it is, that we have some problems with sometimes. And I think this is the first year, and the trees were 3 years old when we planted them, so they were not so tiny. This is oats growing on the right-hand side. You can take the next picture, please. Weed control is always a problem. We have different kind of machineries to attack the grass and the weeds beneath the trees. And this is one of the machines that we have been using. I'm not very happy with that one. We don't work with it so much anymore. But that's a problem because we have those small, I think they're called in English, vowel. It's a animal that is living underneath in the soil, and it eats the roots of the apple trees. So those are a big problem, and we need to keep the grass short to make it possible for predators like birds and fox and so on to eat this kind of mice, or I think it's called vowel, something like that. Okay, we can take the next picture, please. Here is another year we grow field beans in between the rows of trees. We have a system that is called chameleon system with the machine. It's a sowing machine. We sow on 25 centimeters row, and we cut the weed between the rows with the same machine. Later we put another equipment on, and it moves 25, no, 20, 12.5 centimeters aside to cut between the rows. Yeah, with this picture you can just see how the trees are getting a little bit bigger. This is year number 2, I think it was. The next picture, please. Yeah, we like to use this machine instead now between the rows and the trees to manage the weeds. And I have an even bigger one that we go in between the trees. Now when they are small, they are vulnerable, and we have to be careful and to get the weeds away. Okay, we can take the next picture, please. In springtime, I employ about 10 to 15 young people, 15, 16 years old, from the schools and the football teams and so on. And we work on the field to manage the weeds between or close to the apple trees. And we also walk all the fields more or less to pick difficult weeds from the grain fields. So they work for me about a week every year around midsummer time. Okay, we can take the next picture, please. This just shows when we harvest the oats with my combine harvest. And we can take the next picture, please. Yeah. The cutter of the combine harvester is 22 feet, and there is 16 meters between. Well, the sewing machine is 8 meters wide. So the important thing is that the sewing machine is the right one. For the combine, it's 3. You have to go 3 times, but you just go a little bit faster when you don't have a full. When you take full cut on the cutter on the combine harvester, so it doesn't take long time to harvest the field. It takes me about 4 or 5 hours to cut the field, to harvest the field normally in the autumn. So the trees do not make it take so much long time to harvest or to manage. Okay, we can take the next picture, please. Here's a picture of our small shop. We started this shop, it's close to 4 years ago. And since then, we've had about 18,000 visitings. So 18,000 times some people have been buying some stuff in our small shop, which is, I think, is astonishing. We did not know whether this was going to work or not, but we have a city of 55,000 inhabitants just 2-3 kilometers away from the farm. And around, if we say in 100 kilometers where we go with our own trucks to deliver to bakeries and so on, I think it's about 2 million people living. So there will be definitely be enough customers for us to find in this area. Okay, we can take the next picture.
Sorry, Anders. Let me remind you, we have 2 or 3 more minutes.
Yeah, I am soon ready. Perfect. This is just a picture of the interior of our little shop. It's not a big shop. It's 4 meter multiplied by maybe 5 or something like that. And to the left, you can see our products that we make. And we also have other products in the shop. It's very important to sell lots of different things. The only thing we don't have is fresh vegetables. Otherwise, we have potatoes, we have dairy products like cheese, and we have meat from different kind of animals. We also have fish. We have different kind of oils, and very important, we have egg. Eggs are extremely important to have. I buy the eggs from one of my neighbors. We can take the next picture, please. Important is to invite people to the farm and talk about our things. It's a sort of advertising, of course, and this is just neighbors being invited to my farm. We have an Instagram too, of course, for people to find us. And we can take the next picture, please. I think that's our Instagram there. So if you want to see what we're doing, you can go into Instagram and there will be pictures and some small films and so on. Yeah, then I'm ready, Anders.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much for this. I can attest to the quality of the produce. I give my son porridge from Anders Lunderid's production every night, and he's in love with it.
We used to say you get strong, wealthy, and happy if you eat it.
Yeah, very nice. Okay, so we do have a few questions for you in the chat, but I'll leave the floor open. First, I can see that we have a question from Alexander. If you do have a question, please raise your hand and I will choose you. So Alexander, please go ahead. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for the very interesting presentation. And my question, how do you collaborate with the scientists in the field of agroforestry, and how it does help you to increase your yields maybe? Maybe you invite some scientists and students to your farm to practice.
That's right. That's the way. We have had lots of meetings here, and we have people working for the government that have an expertise. So we have learned a lot from them. And my son, my youngest son, he went to practice on another farm with apples to learn about how to prune and how to work with apples. So because in the beginning I didn't know anything about growing apples. Of course, I'm a grain grower. Yeah, thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Excellent. Then I will take a question from the chat. It's from Pavlo. Are there governmental programs in Sweden to cover the costs of field fencing to protect the crops from damage by wild animals? So the fencing that you spoke of.
Yeah, there is. That was nothing that I applied for, but there can be some money from the government. But mostly that kind of protection is against wolves, not other kind of animals. As it's a big talk in Sweden what we should do with the animals eating our crops. but I have not applied for any money of that kind. No. Yep. Do you know anything about this, Anders?
Like you say, it's more for protection of animals rather than crops. So I don't think there's any, at least no standing support system for it.
No.
A follow-up question on this that might be relevant is how about shelter bed, windbreak plantation, and the support for the trees themselves? Are there any government programs to help you finance the planting of the trees?
Not that I have applied for, nothing like that. No, not what I know of. No. Another problem is that Sweden has not a system for applying for. I mean, we have a support system in our agricultural system to apply for money, but there is no agri-forest apply. You cannot apply any money for agroforestry that works for apples. Maybe you know more about this than I do, Anders. No.
You're correct. That there, like you have done to privately finance every aspect of it. It's the option that we have available to us, and thank you for doing so. We have another question from Katarina or comment. Please, Katarina, you can ask your question.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very nice, and I'm glad that you are such a nice person that do what you like. And I want to ask you, do you want to expand your land? Because you said that some of them you own and some you rent or something like that.
Yeah.
And also, you said that mostly and in general you have a hard clay, and in my opinion, it's very hard. And how you manage that, all of that, and if you want to, do you want to expand your lands?
For the moment, I am not expanding my farm. That's a question for my sons and my daughter, whether they would like to do this. I do, on the other hand, cooperate with my neighbors. So for the flour I make, I lend them seed to grow on their farm, and then I buy it back to make flour and so on. Because I have a big house for my dryer, and my storage house is very good, so I can manage more crop that I can grow. So I get help from my neighbors. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
that's how I do it. The heavy clay is, of course, always something that is challenging, but this is the way it is here. We know how to manage it, more or less. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And also, I'm in love in that opinion that you said that you are in collaboration with your neighbor about eggs and so on. It's very lovely. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
And for your hard job.
Yes, thank you for excellent questions. We have two questions in the chat from Marina. Perhaps you would like to ask them yourself. Otherwise, I will ask them for you. So, the buffer zone you leave between the rows of the trees and the crop as to not interfere with the machinery when the trees grow. How large is this, and what's the plan for the buffer zone?
Yeah, it's 4 meters in all. So the system is 4 meters of apple trees, 16 meters of grain, and then 4 meters again with apple trees. So there's 2 meters on each side of the tree, and there is 4 meters between the trees. So that's how I did it.
Okay, we get a thumbs up from Marina there. Another question from the same person. Have you noticed an increase in natural pest control when using agroforestry? And we can combine that with pest problems that arise from your tree rows.
That is difficult to say, to measure. Anders Heimer, who has, he's the next speaker, he has been looking into this. But for me, it's more like, this has an impact, but to see it, to detect it, it's difficult, of course. But there are lots of bugs and predator bugs and so on the trees. And of course, they are feeding from aphids and so on, if there are any in the crop, just 2 meters away. That is obvious. But just to see and to measure this, I don't have the possibility to do that. So I cannot answer your question perfectly, but there is, of course, an interaction between the trees and the crop. That's evident. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more minute for another question. I see that Hanna has written something in Ukrainian.
I wrote
Perhaps you.
that participants can ask in Ukrainian if they, afraid or hesitate to speak English, so it's not a problem as well. I will
Okay.
help with translation and reading. And if you
All
don't have question, maybe I can go for one short one. But what was the idea to shift from the open space arable land to agroforestry systems? Maybe you know the origin of how it came to your farm.
Yeah, that's a good question. I must have read somewhere many years ago, that the interaction between trees and crops are good, and the more biology in a managed way is good for the environment. So I knew this, and I had this idea that I should grow some trees or bushes around the farm, because we have a green desert here. So we want to have more trees and fruits and so on. But I didn't know how to do it. And that was just first time when Steven Briggs showed me how to do it in an alley agroforestry system. And it was like my hair was just standing straight back, and I was just flabbergasted by this idea. And I ordered 1,000 trees right away, and then we took some more. And my wife wondered whether I've gone totally crazy, more than usually. But she's still on the farm, so we're happy about this. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Let's save the rest of the questions we have for Anders Lunderyd to the panel at the very end. We will now take an 8-minute break and then listen to the next speaker, Anders Heimer. So 5 minutes to 11 Swedish time, 5 minutes to 12 Ukrainian time. We'll be back. And the next speaker is Anders Heimer. Thank you very much, Anders Lunderyd. That was excellent. Hello, Anders. Heimer.
Hello.
Yes, I can see that you're ready to go. We have another 4 minutes, but if you were going to share from your computer, correct?
Yes, it's
Yes.
idea.
You can set that up already now if you want to make sure that you have everything in place.
Nu kommer det upp, du kan inte dela skärmdelning medan andra deltagaren delar.
Okay. Then tech support, or är det kanske, it might be Linus. Well, I suppose we have to wait until he comes back. Tech support, could you remove the current screen sharing? Thank you. Okay, now, Anders Heimer, you can try. Thank you. Thank you, tech support.
Now we are ready.
Perfect. Another 2 minutes.
Okay.
So it's now 55, and I can see that there are potential academic collaborations developing in the chat. This warms my heart and makes me very happy. So make sure that you get each other's contact details. If that is an issue somehow, then please contact somebody within the project, and we will make sure that the correct contacts that you're seeking will be facilitated. Okay, Anders Heimer, thank you very much for this. Please take it away.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I will now show some pictures and tell you about the documentation project on alley cropping of apple and fruit and nut trees combined with open crop cultivation, including winter wheat. My name is Anders Heimer, as you said, and I've been working a large part of my professional life as an advisor for organic farmers in my region, in the western part of Sweden. The last 20 years, I can say, I also have had the opportunity to work with farmers in Colombia, in South America, and many of them use different agroforestry systems in their production of coffee, cocoa, and tropical fruits. And it has been very interesting to learn a lot from their work there. Then about the project. This project I will present, and which deals with agroforestry cultivation systems on the plains, has been about documenting what happens during the establishment of a row crop of apple trees on fields with mainly cereal crops. And in order to gather as much experience and knowledge as possible, we have used a participant-driven learning and action research method. My presentation is a survey of what we have done during 3 years, and the method assumes that farmers, advisors, and researchers have unique skills and knowledge that are utilized through work with observations, documentation on certain measurements that show results, having conversations leading to solutions of problems in the fields, etc. During a large part of the meetings, we have had dialogues led by a facilitator. And I can try to respond to the question, the earlier question about the pests. We have not had resources in this project to make scientific work, but of course we have observed different varieties of aphids as an example of insects. We have seen some fungus, etc. on the trees. But in the discussion, together with researchers, we made a conclusion that it's very early, because the trees, the plantations of trees in this project was done 5 or 4 years ago, and still they are quite small. The conclusion in the group was that we might see differences about pest infestants, etc., later on when the trees are bigger. And hopefully it will be possible for some new project to make clearer what results we can obtain. Just to show you the map, the 3 farms with alley cropping are situated in the western part of Sweden. Venasäby, close to the big lake Vänern, and south of the big lake Vänern, Anders Lunderyds gård, Lundens gård, and a little bit south in the department of Halland, close to Halmstad, Kyrkbygård. And it has been very interesting to work together with these farmers, really pioneers. The overall aim of the project was to contribute to the development of agroforestry systems under the conditions prevailing in Sweden, in the conditions we have with the climate, the soils, etc. We also wanted to document how the establishment of an alley plantation can be done with the current focus on producing good food, good quality food, while using ecosystem services such as carbon sequestration and preserving biodiversity in the agricultural landscape, as you also heard Anders Lunderyd talked about. The ambition has thus been to contribute to the development of cultivation systems and new operating directions that can hopefully lead to better business results and at the same time function sustainably with minimized burden on the surrounding environment and the climate we all live and depend on. As a sub-goal, we initially defined the factors that likely limit the size and quality of production in the alley system. We used both physical measurements and assessments of the crops based on agroecological analysis. We did not have much money to make analysis, deep analysis in the crops and in the fields, but some analysis were done, and we have the results documented in the report. Another sub-goal was to document the establishment costs for an alley plantation. You heard that Anders responded that he financed everything, the fence as well. And I can come back to that question a little bit later. But about the fence, it is necessary to protect the entire field of desirable apple tree roots from roe deer, from elk, from wild pigs, etc., with a good fence. And to know a little bit more about the costs, we interviewed through semi-structured in-depth interviews the 3 farmers, and we have now a good knowledge about the costs taken on these farms. Part of the documentation work involved measuring, weighing, and observing. Thus, we established a baseline on each field with soil sampling for some chemical and physical analysis, counting the presence, for example, of earthworms in different soil layers, documenting the presence of weeds and insects, insect pests I told you earlier. Crop plots of oats and winter wheat growing between the tree rows were taken out and analyzed for weight and ordinary grain quality. On this picture, you can see how we measured the occurrence of earthworms in the top layer of the soil. And during the meetings with a group of farmers, advisors, and researchers, we were then able to discuss why the occurrence of earthworms as an indicator could differ between the different fields and farms, depending the soil quality, depending the crop rotations earlier on the farm, etc. As a summary of the observations in the field, we can state the following. And Anders Luned mentioned earlier, the attacks of voles on roots of the trees were a major problem on all the tree farms, and measures to combat voles were absolutely necessary. On this picture, you can see a type of mesh cage that one of the growers built to prevent voles from damaging the roots of young trees. Perennial weeds could also create problems for the establishment of trees, and you could see the methods used by Anders. And we discussed in the group if we should would work to have black soil, to not have no weeds at all the first years, or if it would be better to have lay cut down every month during the summer. But the conclusion was that the best system would be to have black soil close to the trees the first years during the establishment phase, because the problems of the voles. Okay, then of course the soil structure is very important planting fruit trees. Then it is a conclusion that the field needs to have a good drainage and a good soil structure before you plant apple trees or nut trees. You have to choose a good field to do this work. We also talked a lot about the wind and precipitation. In all 3 farms on the plains, there were some periods during a part of the year with very little rains, that the wind could affect the plantations badly. Then a good recommendation came out to plant wind shelters some years before starting to plant fruit trees. Okay. The last or another sub-goal was to assess the sustainability of the entire farming system from a broader perspective. For this theoretical work, we used the entire group's collective experiences and knowledges and observations during the establishment years, these 3 years on the 3 farms. The method we used was FAO's Sustainable Assessment of Food and Agricultural Systems, SAFA, called SAFA. And when the SAFA method is used, it assesses how well the agricultural system responds to various parameters that are in turn linked to indicators. As an example of indicators used in the assessing of biodiversity in this case, we looked at the proportion of tree buffer zone, how big it was in relation to cultivated land. We looked at the crop rotation used between the rows, the high diversity in the tree rows in this buffer zone. We looked at perennial crops between tree rows, if ley was used in the crop rotations as an example, and we discussed about the cereal and tree plant varieties of local origin, if that was an important indicator. You can see at the right-hand side here the picture used by FAO describing this method SAFA with the overall dimensions of sustainability assist, and they are the governance, good governance, environmental integrity, economic resilience, and social well-being. And on the next slides, I will try to explain a little more about the discussions in our project group. In order to make the assessments noted for a specific farming system to provide interesting information, the outcome of the assessments needs to be compared with some other farming systems. In our project, we chose to compare the alley crop with a monoculture of cereals and on another side with natural pasture. In this table you can see on this slide, we selected 9 different parameters that were particularly interesting to assess. And they are, you can see them from the first line. The greenhouse gas emissions and arable land as a carbon sink. Second, the local climate. Third, the soil fertility. Fourth, the biodiversity. Fifth, the resource used, all the resource used, including materials, including the tractors and the energy used for all the work on the farm, etc. Sixth, the economy of the production system. Seven, the vulnerability or resilience of the system. Number 8, the local economy. And you heard a lot about how Anders Lundegård on his farm is managing the economy by meeting the clients without have many other actors in the chain. The local economy can help the farm, and they can help neighbors processing some of the products of the farm, etc. And the third, the ninth sustainability parameter was social welfare. And in order to make these assessments fair, a number of indicators were set up for each parameter. We will not go into all the indicators now. If anyone is particularly interested in this case, we can show this separately. When we discussed and assessed values in the table for each cultivation system, we put them in relation to a spider diagram to get a visual picture that shows the sustainability of the system. And here you can see the 3 cultivation systems with their respective diagram, spider diagram. First, Lundens Gård with alley cultivation on the left-hand side. In the middle, the conventional cereal cultivation, and on the right-hand side, the natural grazing pasture. Trying to explain a little bit more about our conclusions, I can say that alley cultivation system is considered to be particularly good for the local climate, the local economy, as I just told you, and for the resilience of the system. These factors or parameters got good points in this assessment. When we see on the same spider diagram for this alley cultivation system, we see that the cultivation system performs relatively well for carbon sink, soil fertility, biodiversity, and social welfare. And on the final picture, we found out with our discussions in the group that the resource use and the economy in the system at this stage was relatively weak compared to the conventional cereal production system at this moment. But just to explain that this was the results of the discussions of all the experiences in the group of farmers, researchers, and advisors. And it's not a knowledge we got from this that is something exactly, but it's a very interesting discussion to have into a group, and maybe it can help to make the system better in the future as well. And just some more words about this participative learning and action research method. It is very, very fruitful, I can say. It was interesting to have specialized horticulturalists in the group. We had researchers from the university, and we had several farmers in the group. And in some of the discussions, we also invited other farmers to participate to get these multiple perspectives. And I can say that this group learning process, and I have used it in South America as well, is very, very interesting to use. And as an example, you can see Anders Lunderud in this slide. He is talking about the different machinery he has been used when he combat the weeds in the field with different methods close to the trees, different from the methods he's using with his chameleon system in the grains, winter wheat, oats, etc. And we think that this method leads you to quickly gaining more knowledge and thus being able to develop the farm business in a positive direction, and not just listening to a speech like you do now. Doing this work in the field on the farm has been very, very interesting, I can say. Okay, then I would like to just tell you a little bit about the scope of agroforestry in Sweden. And you already heard from Ingrid many data, and I can more or less repeat that modern silvipastoral agroforestry, where grazing animals walk in planted gardens or rows, is currently very limited in scope in Sweden. But there are many pastures with scattered trees and grazed forests that are important landscape elements and that are similar to agroforestry. And thinking about the pioneers of our documentation project, it has been very interesting to see on one of the farms, he uses his cattle to graze, and maybe I have another picture. Yes, you can see it here. On this picture, you can see that the apple trees and nut trees are planted on a field of ley, and the crop rotation of this farm, and the thinking of this farmer is to have ley 3 or 4 years or even more years, and then change and seed cereal crop with pulses as well, and then seed another ley to have fodder for his cattle, and also to have fodder, part of the fodder for his hens. He has small houses, possible to move, to put them some days in one place and then move them to another place, giving the opportunity for the hens to eat green fodder combined with other fodder to produce very, very good quality eggs. Okay. Then some words about research in this field of competence. And sorry to say that in Sweden we just have one research station that that conducts field research in agroforestry. And you see the name here, Lönstorp. It's situated at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences in Alnarp, near Malmö, in the far south of Sweden. And among the various long field trials carried out on this farm, one can note an experiment comparing different cultivation systems, one of which is alley cultivation. And here you can see the plan of this agroecological intensification system at Lönstorp. Unfortunately, it has not been possible for our project group to move to visit this farm, but I would like to do that this coming summer, if possible, to know a little bit more about it. I don't know if Ingrid Öborn, if you know a little bit more about Lönstorp, and you maybe can say some word of that. But as I can say, they have planned their systems, their crop rotations in a very good manner, and it will be interesting to see the results the coming years. Okay, just a few words about the support and policy and the possibilities to get some subsidies. You talked about it earlier, and as I've got some information from the authorities, there are some possibilities to get support and subsidies linked to the environmental program. And the data I got is that there are no money for a specific area like it is for different other crops. But for the investment, there are a possibility to get subsidies when you have accounted very well the costs, and you can make an application. But it's a, as I can see, it's a very complicated systems, and I think it would be a good thing to introduce, to, as somebody said earlier, to have some subsidy to the first years of establishment of this type of systems. But of course, if we will get more information from the science to explain why these systems are good for the future, it might be easier to get systems to give subsidies for these investment costs. The information I got was that since 2024, 2 years ago, they introduced some possibilities to apply for this money, but it's a little bit complicated. Okay, talking about advisory organizations and training. Advice for agroforestry and alley cultivation is not common in Sweden. Advice for establishing these cultivation systems is not at all extensive, but there are a few individual advisors with a different main focus on other topics who have built up competence themselves. There are some advisors, good advisors within the Swedish Board of Agriculture. You can see the logotype of this governmental organization. And also in the rural economy and agricultural societies organizations, there are some advisors with interest and knowledge in the area. Then I believe that the deepest or broadest knowledge is found within the non-profit association Agroforestry Sweden. And Anders Lindén, our member of this meeting, and he is the chairman of this organization. And maybe you will comment something later on, Anders. In every case, I also would like to mention Angereds Gård. It's a test farm driven by Västra Götaland County. It's the regional authority. They have an educational unit in horticulture and agriculture on this farm. And on this farm, there are several persons interested with knowledge, and they have built up fields with test cultivations of different agroforestry methods. And I've been there once, and it will be very interesting coming back to see how the different agroforestry systems can be used and how they develop in the next years. Okay, when we finalized this documentation project last year, there still were some questions to be answered. And the most interesting question from many farmers is, can we get a good economy using these systems? And we can just say that we have documented, and we can give very much details about the establishment costs at this moment. But to say something about the economy in the long run, we have to continue with documentation on the coming years, when the production of the alley crops, the apples, or maybe on some farms nuts, giving money when we harvest apples and nuts. Anders Lunderyd showed me a good harvest the 5th year, but I think the production of apples and nuts will increase the coming years, and making a documentation on several farms will give us more information to make better conclusions for the future. With this picture of, I think it's spring wheat from one of the farms, I will just stop and say thank you for the attention.
Thank you so much, Anders Heimer. That was very informative and very interesting to hear about the research methodology that has been applied to agroforestry in your project in particular. I can see in the chat that we have a message from Nova University of Applied Sciences in Finland, inviting everyone present to their pilot area with contact information. And Marina also left her contact information from Kiev as an opportunity for future collaborations. I think I will post a contact to the person involved in the project in Lönstorp in the chat right there, Johannes Albertsson, for everyone to get in touch with. Both Swedes and Ukrainians are welcome to get in touch with those. Okay, so I see no raised hands. We have 9 minutes for questions specifically to Anders Heimer, and you're welcome to raise your hands if you have questions. And then we have another 20 minutes for more general, broad questions that could be answered by any of our speakers present here today. So we have a question from the chat, Pavlo. Who, in your opinion, should support farmers in transitioning towards agroforestry? Advisors within agronomy or subsidies? Should it be local NGOs or extension services or living lab projects, I suppose, associated to research institutions, or any other suggestions? I come to think of peer-to-peer learning between farmers, for example. What are your advices?
Of course, there hopefully can come several different types of development projects. Of course, it's important to be able to realize scientific investigations on the farms, to have more knowledge comfortable that you can use when you discuss with policymakers. I think that it's important to have more money for scientific work, and this work you can use this participative method together with scientific work. I think that would be a very, very good manner to development and make better conclusions together. Before we have more information, more scientific information, I think it's quite difficult to convince the policymakers to start new programs with subsidies, etc. But of course, it would be very interesting having investment money for the costs, because as we have seen on these 3 farms, the investments with fences, with apple trees or nut trees, plants, etc., has been very, very high, and the pioneers have paid everything themselves so far to make it possible for more farmers. Of course, subsidies related to the investment costs would be interesting.
Thank you very much. That was my question. As a researcher, I just see a gap between researchers who do scientific research and NGOs who work with farmers. And I see no intermediate body. So that's why I posted this question.
Yes, indeed. It would be very, very interesting to get closer.
As a representative of one of these NGOs, I can say that we also have a feeling that a lot more research is needed. Like Anders says, this is the usual way of things in Sweden, where agroforestry is niche. And I assume that Anders agrees with me. That it's not a widespread practice in the same way as it is in Ukraine. And the possibilities for Sweden to learn from Ukrainian experience and established research is tremendous. So that the research inspired by Ukraine could be conducted in Sweden in order for the normal standard procedure of changing policy could take place. That would be very much encouraged, and I hope cooperations will arise from meetings like this and other meetings coming in the future. But to tie it back to the Swedish experience, for example, agroforestry as we see it today, it's not just the practitioners, the pioneers that we see here, but it's also a push from policy from the European Commission. I suppose this is a question more directed to everyone. So how how important, from your perspective, all three of you, including our practitioner, has the European Union been for agroforestry in the field, so to speak? And you're welcome, Anders, to speak to this if you have an opinion. Otherwise, we can go to Anders Lunderyd.
I think I can start. I mean, agroforestry has drawn attention in other parts of Europe for much longer time than it has in the northern countries. Of course, I mean, as I showed in the beginning, forestry is a very important sector here. And we can also say that most farmers also have forest land. Maybe it's small, more for building material and firewood, but traditionally, like every farm has had some pieces of forest, and some have very much, which means that it's not for bringing in the trees on the farms because they need some wood. You know, it's not a motivation. So that's why it needs to be a different motivation in Sweden to bring it in. Windbreaks or diversification, you know, more high value products. There needs to be other reasons. While in other parts of Europe, and we can see that that's why other countries have had the subsidy or support system for longer time, they really need to bring in trees for various purposes because agricultural land is dominating. So I think it has been nice to watch what is happening there, even if we are felt outside, and we are happy that since 2024, at least some parts of the agriculture or the common agriculture policy is directed towards some agroforestry practices. And I just posted, unfortunately, in Swedish, but there are also a lot of pictures, the information report that they published last year. So that is like a shift, that there is some interest from the government. And I think that's like sort of thanks to EU, and I think the pressure, I mean, the experience in the EU have made it easier to make pressure on the Swedish government to also start to look into this area. Because to respond to that other question, I think it's needed different actors. Since there are so many support systems for agriculture, this needs also to be part. But also we need NGOs, we need the private sector, we need different advisors. So we need all sorts of things. And of course, there's also living lab projects going on here now, which are towards agroecology and very much towards grazing, more grazing-based dairy and beef production and so on. And of course, it would be nice to also have some directed towards integration of trees on arable farms, for example. And maybe that is possible within the farmers' calls for living labs, which still will come, a few of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree what Inger just said, and at this moment I have no more comments. You said it very good, Ingrid, more than I could have done.
We have small questions still in Ukrainian, if we can go for it. Anders Heimer, for you was mentioning the challenge on wind and precipitation, and we see a question from Lesa Rebalko regarding the bare soil around the trees instead of mulching, for example. Do you use mulching for these cases to save the water, the moisture in the soil?
On one of these farms in the project, the farmer, like a prevention, he planted a wind shelter some years before he started, because he has seen problems with the wind moving his soil when it's very windy and it hasn't been raining. The soil is dry, and then the wind can move the soil. Then he put organic material around the trees to prevent loss of soil and to prevent to have naked roots, etc. And I think it is important to think about several or at least two methods: wind shelters and organic material on the top.
Excellent.
But may I ask there, I mean, when we talk about the subject you raised there, Anna, like Anders Lunneryd, yeah, both of you, all these wolves, you know, these small animals coming, would they be encouraged if you do too much mulching? So do we have like a trade-off between trying to prevent you know, evapotranspiration or build soil fertility and those animals? Are they encouraged by mulching?
They are
what
encouraged.
factor?
Sorry, my observations and my observations in my garden as well is that the voles like to live, to be under vegetation. Of course, they also like organic materials, but the main problem is if you have a ley or weeds, very big weeds, and giving space without wind below this part of vegetation. I can't say exactly, but I think giving or putting organic material on the black soil will help the apple trees very much. And in every case, you have to fight the voles with several methods to take them away, with cages, using cages the first years, and traps, etc. It's a big problem. What do you say, Anders Lunderyd?
It's absolutely a problem with the vole. I have kept the soil as much as I can black, which is not possible all the time. And I haven't had so much destroyed trees out in the field, but on the closest to my farm, I sort of planted a hedge of apple trees, and there are about 40% of something like that that has been they are gone, they are dead, and I had to take them away because I couldn't keep the soil black there. It's too close to the fence, and we can see that close to the house where my son is living, he has 2 cats, and there are more cats around that area, and they have kept the vole more shortly. And there has also been other things to be for them to eat than the apple trees, because I have a lady there that grows flowers for selling flowers, and they have been attacking her flowers, the perennial flowers, or the sort of, call them onions. I don't know what the for tulipans, tulips. Yeah, we have to keep the soil black. That's the strategy that I've been using. Thank you.
I can say that not having evidence, but in the discussion in the project group, we were talking a lot about this problem, and we would like to have plants around the apple trees, like white clover or something that is not growing very high, but not the first 5 or 6 years. Afterwards, when the apple trees are bigger, it might be an option to seed white clover or other plants, not very high growing, to have an environment very, very good for natural enemies to the insect pests, etc. It's an idea from our discussion.
One of the farms had Venasebi. They had a Timothy growing a grass, sort of grassland or ley, growing the year before and the same year that they planted. And I think they lost about 30 or 40% of their apple trees because of the vole. So you have to have, you cannot grow winter wheat the first 5-6 years, and you cannot have what we call vall, lay or anything like that the first years, because the vole is always there then.
Yeah, no, that's our experience also from other countries where we thought, of course, weeds is a problem. And we really, and it also, it's too much like cultivation because it was on sloping land, it was problem with erosion. But we learned when we tried different green manure crops, even if they were short, they competed too much with the young trees the first years. It was really like, significant, which you don't always get in this field type of research. So I agree. I mean, there they do a bit of mulching. I mean, because they also do pruning of the trees early on. So they put like dead plant material around, so they don't keep bare soil. Because maybe you can do that, Anders Lunderyd, where you live, because you have a bit of rain, and of course it's not so hot like in Ukraine. You have more continental climate. You have hotter summers. So maybe it is more needed to protect the soil, but maybe not with living material from the beginning, because it's a number of years it was competing. We didn't think so. We thought we were very clever. We took very low growing green manure crops, but still it competed too much. They are not so strong in the beginning, the trees. And apple trees are not like the strongest trees for competition. If you want like to have a strong tree really for the tree growth, you should take some completely different species. But now if we want the fruit trees, for example, they are a bit more demanding and sensitive, we can say, not as competitive as other things.
That ties in really well with another question that we have in the chat, and I would agree that apple trees, for the apple trees, the vole is an extreme problem, while there might be other crop trees that are less sensitive. So the question is from Lanne Lassila. You have mainly spoken about apple trees. Are there any trials going on with other tree crops on a commercial scale? Anders Heimer mentioned nuts, for example.
I don't have a total overview, but on 2 of the 3 farms in this project, they planted walnut, hazelnuts as well. But apple trees was the main complementary crop to the cereals. But they also have planted walnut, hazelnuts, and castagne. I don't know the name in English.
That's not castanea.
Thank you. But these trees were planted just 4 and 3 years ago, and we don't have much experience so far. Maybe you have, Anders Lindén.
Yes, but I think it's not the topic of today, but generally my farming experience tells me that apple trees are the most sensitive ones, and everything else is less sensitive. And when it comes to trials, there are a few trials going on at Alnap as well on walnut trees, but that is mainly for timber production. So the timber production in an agroforestry setting, it's very possible. And I can write contact detail to Jens Peter Skovgard, who is doing those trials as well. Otherwise, it's only enthusiast farmers doing this work. Yeah, I suppose I can leave another contact for a quite large project called Nötverket that are about to do larger scale test plots for nut crops as well, specifically. Otherwise, Usually, if it's energy crops like poplar and solix, these don't have any issues with voles. Um, at least it doesn't matter very much to the trees. But I have another question to tie it back to the object of this webinar, and that's the combination of trees with wheat in particular. I suppose that could be a good way of rounding off the session. If Anders, you mentioned that you're hesitant to use wheat, at least in the first years, in combination with the trees. Or is that an issue that you have identified that wheat in particular is difficult? Please.
I assume this is the Anders you was asking. Yeah, of course. No, why I didn't want to grow winter wheat is because then I have no, it's the vole again, the small animal. Because in the autumn I have no, I plow earlier, and I cannot do anything about the vole. In the springtime, I will destroy my crop with the tractor driving around the field well, make the soil black again in the springtime. So maybe in 2 years or something, when I think the trees are strong enough and that I don't see many signs of vole in between the trees and around the trees, I might try to grow winter wheat again. But no, not for the moment. Spring wheat, I grow spring wheat, of course, that's no problem. So wheat is not the problem. It's the long time with the crop on the field that is the problem. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. If Hanna, if you have identified other questions in the chat, I can't find anything.
It was small question, but again about apples to Anders Linnert regarding the varieties. You mentioned a lot of varieties of apple trees, and Olesa, our colleague and partner in the project, she asked what is the oldest authentic varieties you have in your garden?
Yeah, it was as I see this as a testing and something to start an interest around growing apple trees in this way. I wanted to try different kinds of varieties, but now after 6 years with the apple trees, I must say I wish I didn't plant so many strange different kinds of of apple trees, because they are not so much. There's not so much production in those trees, many of them, and the trees that are more adopted to more what should I say, contemporary growing, and they are well, they are more suited for production actually than the old kind of varieties. And yeah, that's kind of the answer to that question. So don't go for too many different kind of, but it's very good to have those four, because they have different maturing time. So when the discovery comes first, and I can harvest that, and when that is finished, we have the Santana apple, and then comes the Karin Schneider a week later, and last the Egremont Russet. So it's good to have continuous harvesting. It's very good, and the discovery apples are nice for drying, for make dry apples, and in the beginning of the season, many others have a lot of apples, so they are more difficult to sell. The other ones are winter fruit and can be kept for a long time in cold, so they are better. And I don't want to have early harvesting fruits because then I have to harvest the crop. So they are quite late varieties. They work best for me. Yeah.
Thank you.
We have a comment from Ingrid.
Yes, it was this about sort of wheat growers going into agroforestry. I mean, many of the big wheat growers, conventional ones on the plains of Sweden, they are more into like highly mechanized, intensive agriculture. And then to be interested in going into agroforestry, you need to, like Anders Lunnerud, you employ like 7 people on 200 hectares. And they might employ like maybe not employ anyone on 200 hectares or half a person. So you need to have the philosophy that you want to employ more people on your farm. You want to intensify like economically, diversify, have a different like idea about how to develop your business to become interested. And so far, many of the winter wheat growers are more for like quantity, of course quality as well, because they are paid for quality, but not for engaging more people. But I mean, it might change. So I think it would be a shift. We need more people engaged in, I think, in the agricultural sector. That would be nice. And then they could do it. But for the time being, we don't see that as the main direction. So that's why we still work with like pioneers and demonstration farms. And maybe it would be nice with, yes, some more networking activities, as we have been discussing, to create a wider interest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We only have another couple of minutes left on this session, and I would say my most sincere and strong gratitude towards the speakers of this session, and also to our Ukrainian and Swedish audience. Thank you very much for participating in this. This was one of 4 webinars from the Swedish side, and please keep your eyes open for an invitation for the next 3 value chains. That will be rapeseed, apples. Even though this discussion has been a lot about apples, this will be apples in particular, and also cheese making in a small scale setting. So keep your eyes open for this. Thank you again to everyone, and make sure that you all stay in contact to forward agroforestry as a practice in Sweden and in Ukraine. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a nice afternoon. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So I suppose that some of us will stay behind a little bit in this this forum. We'll wait a few minutes for other participants to drop off. Or Linus, maybe you can take over. Are we supposed to use this same link for the rest of our conversation, or are we going to use something else?
Actually, we haven't determined, so we could. I think we could, if we could ask to be made host, so we don't need to